Good evening, and welcome to the premiere of This Week in Football, where we analyze the latest and greatest in everything football. I'm your host, Dave Hughes, alongside Casey Bryant and Peter Denota, where this week we'll be talking about tonight's Bills versus Dolphins game, Adrian Peterson's future, Michael Crabtree and the 49ers' dysfunction, the recent released college football rankings, and we will close on our Week 11 games of the week. Casey, to start off, let's just talk about Brendan Albert and his recent injury. How will that affect the offensive line tonight?
Well, obviously, Albert being out for the season is a huge blow to the Miami Dolphins offensive line, which was otherwise pretty solid throughout the entire year. It's going to force rookie right tackle Juwan James over to the left side, which you have to wonder, will he be able to make the transition over to Tannehill's blind side? I think he's absolutely ready for the challenge, though. I think you're going to see a fairly seamless transition for the Dolphins offensive line. But, obviously, the presence of Albert is going to be missed, especially when dealing with Mario Williams and company.
Yeah, I think the Dolphins are in big trouble tonight. Anytime you lose someone on the core offensive line or shift anything, there's going to be trouble. You saw it with the Dolphins last year when the Richie Incognito, Jonathan Martin, Broly Yates scandal. They had a ton of different offensive line lineups, and they were in trouble. The Tannehill was getting hit. But one way I could see them trying to go with the flow is run the read option to the left side. That allows Juwan James to let the pass rusher get upfield. Tannehill reads that, goes up, or he has shown the ability to run because they got someone from the Eagles offensive system run their offense now. I think they can make it work, but it'll be a little shaky.
And both teams are going to be forced to make offensive adjustments, especially considering that Fred Jackson, who was already filled in for an injured C.J. Spiller, announced that he's going to be out for tonight's game with a groin injury. So that's going to force Anthony Dixon and Bryce Brown into the top two running back roles for the Bills. So you're going to see a bunch of adjustments on both sides of the ball tonight.
Speaking of the offensive side, how does Tannehill fare against the more experienced, more wise veteran leadership of Kyle Orton?
Well, I would say that Tannehill has a slight advantage over Kyle Orton this year, if only just because he's relied on a whole lot more for the offense for the Miami Dolphins. He nearly doubles passing attempts between Tannehill and Orton. So I would say that he definitely has the advantage in that he's just utilized a whole lot more. So his own system really puts him in the spotlight a whole lot more. And I think he's proven, like Peter said, he's proven that he can be a little mobile. He can step outside the pocket a little bit. And I think that he's just shown that he's a whole lot more of a complete quarterback this year.
Yeah, I think Tannehill has an advantage because they have a consistent running game. They lost Noshawn Moreno in the beginning of the year, but he didn't really have any effect. Lamar Miller's been there. He's been in there all year. The Bills are shuffling around Anthony Dixon, Bryce Brown. They lost C.J. Spiller for the year. Fred Jackson, they don't know when he's coming back. I think Tannehill is comfortable with his weapons. He has Mike Wallace on the outside. I think he'll be all right tonight.
I think especially with the running game missing for the Bills tonight, you're going to see a whole lot more action for Sammy Watkins tonight for Kyle Orton. You're going to see him targeted a whole lot more.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of Sammy Watkins and Mike Wallace, how big of a game do both of those guys have to have? And what do Tannehill and Orton have to do to get the ball in their hands?
I think Watkins needs a little bit bigger of a game than Wallace because the Bills don't have a solid running game right now. Jackson's out, Spiller's out. With the Mike Wallace, they could afford to hand the ball off to Lamar Miller once in a while. But the thing with the Dolphins, Mike Wallace is the biggest deep threat in the league, and they haven't been using him. He's only averaging about 12 yards per catch or so, around there, and he has the ability to average 20-plus yards a catch. So I think they should maybe run the ball into the line of scrimmage a couple times, set up the play action, throw it deep to Wallace.
Well, I think in the case of both the rookie Sammy Watkins out of Clemson and for Mike Wallace, you're seeing a case of both receivers really making their own mark on the National Football League this year. Watkins, obviously a rookie, has 100-plus yards in 2 of the last 3 games that he's played, so obviously he's a key offensive weapon for the Buffalo Bills. But you're also seeing Mike Wallace, who after what many would consider to be a down year in his first year with the Miami Dolphins, after signing that incredibly lucrative contract with them, he only had 5 touchdown catches last year. This year he's already got 6. So I think that it's a big adjustment for Wallace from last year to this year. While he isn't quite at his full potential yet, I think he's definitely proving that he can be a number 1 receiver in the AFC East this year. But I would look for Sammy Watkins to probably out-duel Mike Wallace tonight.
Speaking of the offense, let's switch to the defense. How big have both defenses for each team been for their teams this year?
Well, the defenses are what are keeping the teams in the wild card and divisional race. They both have solid D-lines. Dolphins have Cam Wake. They also have Maris product Terrence Fede. He has a sack this season. And the Bills, they have Mario Williams, former first overall pick, Kyle Williams, who has just been the anchor of that D-line for a decent amount of time. People thought the Bills were going to be in trouble in the beginning of the year when they lost Kiko Alonso, but they've been all right.
Absolutely. I think that the Bills, the fact that they're top 10 in both categories in rush defense and pass defense, that speaks for itself. Both teams, it's going to be incredibly entertaining to watch. Both teams that have top 10 defenses going after each other, a divisional rivalry game. It's going to be incredibly entertaining to watch. The one thing I would look for probably is that Buffalo has a little bit of an advantage in the rush defense department, and that's especially because of D tackles Mario Williams and Kyle Williams. You would just have that sort of advantage on the defensive line. I would say that Buffalo has the slight advantage defensively tonight.
Defensively, Buffalo has the advantage. As a whole, who wins this game and who can get into that wild card spot?
I'm going to give the game to the Dolphins. I just have a gut feeling it's going to be a very close game. I could see it coming down to special teams, maybe a block punt, maybe a field goal at the end of the game. But I think the Dolphins win it. But whoever wins this game is going to have an advantage of getting into the last wild card spot, because whoever loses, they're going to be at 5-5. It's going to be a tough road. They're going to have to jump over the Steelers, Bengals, Ravens. It's going to be a tough trip for whoever loses this game to get into the playoffs.
Absolutely. I'm going to disagree with Pete, though, and I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills tonight. I think that they're going to steal one on the road, and they're going to be on their way to a wild card spot where they haven't been in a very long time. I think that you're going to see Kyle Orton really step up and start to cement himself as a solid quarterback in this league, something that the Buffalo Bills have struggled with the past couple of years. They've had such inconsistently offensively. Now that they have Kyle Orton and Sammy Watkins as the 1-2 punch really for their offense, even without Fred Jackson tonight, I think that Anthony Dixon is going to be able to hold his own as the running back tonight. He had 60 yards against the Jets last week. I think that you're going to be looking for a very good performance out of Kyle Orton and the Bills tonight.
Well, there you have it. With the preview to tonight's Thursday night showdown between the Dolphins and the Bills, let's head back to the studio to talk about the latest college football rankings and the NFL news heading into Week 11. We're back from our quick vacation in Miami in the studio talking about college football. You guys saw the recent rankings. What do you think?
I think Alabama got screwed over. They got ranked 5th. I think it should be 4th. There's no reason TCU should be ahead of them. Alabama plays in the SEC West, one of the toughest, not only conferences, but divisions. They had to play Ole Miss, Mississippi State, which they're playing this weekend. They had to play LSU. They won last week in overtime. And TCU's playing in the Big 12. Who does the Big 12 have anymore? They haven't been relevant in 5 years. It's a joke of a conference.
See, I would disagree with Pete there and say that TCU would belong in the top 4. And if any team was going to slide out of the top 4 to make room for Alabama, I would say it's actually number 2 Oregon that should slide out. Because Oregon is ahead of undefeated Florida State, and has TCU, who, even though they may be in a weaker conference, is, after all, they're 3rd in the country in points, and they're 8th in passing yards. It's not like they're, just hanging with these, lesser opponents. They're still dominating all of these teams. So I would say that TCU is definitely one of the most prolific scorers in the country, and they belong in the top 4. I would say that, it's probably Oregon, which are only 9-1, that are put at the 2 spot for whatever reason ahead of these other teams, that really deserves to be slid out in favor of Alabama.
Yeah, I don't think Oregon should fall out of the top 4 completely, but there's no reason they should be ahead of undefeated Florida State, defending national champion. I could see Florida State being behind Mississippi State, because Mississippi State's in the SEC, Florida State's in the ACC. It hasn't really played that great of competition. Who do they play? Duke?
You can make the argument that the competition has been comparable between both Oregon and Florida State, and that Oregon has played 3 top 25 teams, Florida State has played 2. And the one team that Florida State did beat as a top 25 opponent, Clemson, they beat without Jameis Winston. So you can make the argument that Florida State has been more successful without one of their key players for a good span of time. So I would say that Florida State definitely deserves to be playing for that championship game. They should be number 1 or 2, really.
And I got a good feeling about Florida State, because they should have lost at least 4 games over the past 2 years. They're the luckiest team I have ever seen in college football. It's a joke. They should have lost the Notre Dame game. Clemson, they had a bunch of calls go their way. They should have lost that game.
They may have gotten fortunate, but you can't deny the pure athleticism of Florida State, especially Jameis Winston. I mean, one of the best quarterbacks in college football. Really. I don't think there's any argument you can make against that at the very least.
Yeah, He's all right.
He's okay. You know,
Just a Heisman Trophy winner. He's
of
all right.
course, yeah. So I think Jameis Winston and the Florida State, Seminoles, for whatever it's worth, deserve to be in the top 4. Luck or not, luck or skill, they found their way in the top 4 for good reason.
And this week of games coming up once again on Saturday, do you see the rankings changing at all?
I could see Alabama definitely in the top 4 because I think they're going to beat Mississippi State at Mississippi State. Mississippi State's a kind of young team, not young, but inexperienced. They haven't been in big situations like this. This Alabama team's been in the title contention for the past 4, 5, maybe even 6 seasons. So they're going to be ready for that primetime game. I think they're going to go into Mississippi State and beat them.
Mississippi State, say that 5 times fast.
I can't.
It's a tongue
I can't even
twister.
say it once.
Well, I mean, Alabama is always prepared for whatever opponent that they play, and that's mostly due to Nick Saban. I mean, the guy is an absolute coaching genius. I mean, he's taken teams that, of varying skill levels and has led them time and time again to always be in the BCS championship game contention. I mean, Saban has done wonders with that program. I think that he's been dealt a lesser hand this year, obviously so, because Alabama has actually proved themselves to be fallible, losing a game this year. But I think that Alabama, could obviously give Mississippi State a good run for their money. I think that it's Mississippi State that's going to be holding on. So I think that you're going to see Alabama slide down in the rankings. So I think that you're going to see Mississippi State pulling away with a victory this weekend against Alabama, if only just because of the home field advantage.
All right, moving from college football, we're going to go to the NFL. Once again, we're going to talk about Adrian Peterson and how he pled no contest to the reckless assault charges. Do you see him being reinstated in the NFL?
I would say so, yes, you would see him, but not until next year. To be perfectly honest with you, I don't think Adrian Peterson should be allowed back in the league this year, if only just to be consistent with the punishments that have been handed out to Ray Rice. When dealing with a difficult and very delicate issue like domestic abuse of any sort, be it, players beating their wives, players beating their girlfriends or their children, as in the case of Adrian Peterson, you have to be very consistent when dealing with such a delicate issue. So I think that you have to lay down the law and say that abuse is abuse, violence is violence. You have to lay out the same punishment regardless. So I think that Ray Rice and Adrian Peterson should be kept out of the league for this year. But honestly, I see the Players Union getting them back in the league, eligible to play next season. I think that, time and success on the field will heal all wounds, really, as proven by Michael Vick. I mean, the fact that people have forgotten what he did a couple of years ago proves that you can be back on an NFL franchise and people will still be cheering for you.
I definitely think Adrian Peterson should be back in the league this year because the policy says 6 games, you should be back. Peterson was on the exempt list, so he was getting paid during his time away. But I think he should be back because he served the 6+ games, what is it, 10 games now. But he should pay the 6 paychecks that the suspension calls for. And I think he should be back, but I don't think the NFL is going to allow him. Like you said, they want to make an example, keep it consistent with Ray Rice and him. But both players are going to be back next season.
The argument to make him back in the league for this season is all based on precedent, really, and the fact that there really was none. The NFL is still trying to develop all of these rules against domestic violence. I think the fact that they're still learning about all of this and still trying to figure out what is an appropriate punishment for that is really why you may see Adrian Peterson back before Week 17. I don't think personally that it's right. I think that they should, keep with their policy that they've instated this year, albeit after the fact of Ray Rice's incident. But it should result in a full year suspension, absolutely, because you have to instill a cultural change surrounding professional sports, surrounding the NFL, surrounding American society, really. This isn't just an NFL issue.
You're right. We've seen it in other sports. Hope Solo, if you're familiar with the United States women's national team. And it's
Slava Voinov and Semyon Varlamov in the NHL, so it's spreading around the entire
all over the
sporting
place.
world.
And it's something to deal with, that needs to be dealt with in a professional manner. But sticking with the NFL, we're going to move on to the Cardinals. Drew Stanton and the recent injury to Carson Palmer. How does Carson fare after he gets back? How do the Cardinals move on from his injury? How do they finish out the season?
Well, in Carson's, he's just on a 3-year deal, $50 million, but the only year guaranteed is next year. So he's going to take his time, get back, make sure he's healthy for next year because that's the only year guaranteed. So his money's guaranteed. So he's going to make sure he plays his best next year. But for this year with Drew Stanton, Bruce Arians says they could win the Super Bowl with him. I don't think so.
You don't like that?
No. I don't know him as a person, but I'm not going to say he's a bad guy. But I don't see him being a Super Bowl worthy quarterback, not even playoff worthy. I think they're going to go on a dramatic decline after Carson Palmer's injury.
I think that the Arizona Cardinals can at the very least ride their defense to a playoff spot, especially given how far they are in their division right now with the leads over the San Francisco 49ers and the Seahawks. I think at this point it's a game of catch-up for the rest of the teams in their division. As far as Drew Stanton leading teams in the playoffs, stranger things have happened. Trent Dilfer has a ring. You've seen cases of lesser quarterbacks being able to win a Super Bowl. So I would say that Drew Stanton, who, by the way, is taking over the starting job now a day after becoming a father. So good for him in that regard at the very least. So he's got a lot going on in his life right now. So I would say that Drew Stanton, is going to be able to cope at the very least with becoming a full-time starting quarterback. It's all a matter of finding consistency in the pocket. And that's really how you're going to make Drew Stanton fail. You have to make him uncomfortable in the pocket. You have to make him mobile because he can't move. He can't. You have to confuse him in the secondary, and you're going to have to force him out of the pocket.
Sticking with the quarterbacks-receiver relationship, let's talk about Michael Crabtree and his recent ordeal with his head coach, Jim Harbaugh. What are your thoughts on that subject? Is it a big deal or isn't it a big deal?
I think it should be a big deal because Crabtree has nothing to be angry about. He's the second most targeted player on their team. I see it as a thing as the players are sick of Harbaugh. You see it nowadays in all levels of football.
And the coaches.
The barking coach. Players can't deal with it anymore. There's some coaches like Tom Coughlin. He knows when to yell at his players. But Harbaugh, constantly on the sideline, in the player's ear. There's a time and place for that. And the players are sick of him.
See, I think it's more a case of the player's ego in this case, because this isn't the first time we've seen Michael Crabtree act up.
That's true.
Let's not forget that Michael Crabtree held out when negotiating his rookie contract. Let's not forget that Michael Crabtree was passed on by several teams in the first round of the 2009 NFL Draft. The Cleveland Browns specifically cited his off-the-field antics and Michael Crabtree the person as a reason why they didn't draft him at the 9th spot as opposed to the 10th spot for the 49ers. So Michael Crabtree, this isn't the first time that he's acted up. This isn't the first time that he's had clashes with the coaching staff or the managerial staff. So I would say that this is really Michael Crabtree having an ego, needing the ball 24/7. I think that he should acknowledge the fact that he's not their number one receiver. He should acknowledge the fact that he's targeted second most on the team, first of all, so it's not like he's not being targeted. But you have Anquan Boldin, who's a league legend, really, as far as wide receivers go in the league ahead of you. So you have a lot to learn from the wide receiver in front of you, and you're not performing incredibly well. It's not like he's putting up league-leading markers. He's acting as if he's the third option. That's a direct quote, actually. He said, "I feel like the third option. I call it like I see it, bro." Like that was his direct quote.
Great ending.
And when asked about it afterward. So, I don't understand how you could possibly function like that when you're already one of the big men on campus for San Francisco. I think this is really just Crabtree, not sucking it up, really, and acknowledging his role.
And taking his time, putting in his time.
Absolutely.
And there are the storylines as we head into Week 11 of the NFL. When we return, the guys are going to predict their winners for our upcoming games of the week. And we're back talking predictions for Week 11 in the NFL. Guys, our first game, Lions at Cardinals. Winner, loser.
I'm going to have to go with the Detroit Lions having the advantage here, if only just because the one weakness that the Arizona Cardinals will have is their pass defense. And I think that that's something that Matthew Stafford, Golden Tate, Calvin Johnson, that's something that they're all going to be able to exploit in the upcoming game, especially considering how successful Calvin Johnson and Golden Tate have been lately. Both of them had about 110 yards receiving last game. The Lions have been on an absolute roll. Matthew Stafford can't be stopped in the fourth quarter. I think that you're going to see the Lions pounce on the Arizona Cardinals, given that they don't have Carson Palmer anymore. I think you're going to see the Lions narrowly edge it out. I'm going to say it's 24-21 Lions at the end of the day.
I also have the Lions winning, but I have them winning a little bit bigger margin, 27-17. Like you said, the Cardinals' pass defense a little shaky. Matthew Stafford, he got Calvin Johnson back. He's going to throw it to him, Golden Tate, maybe even Eric Ebron, the rookie. And the Lions' best defense in the NFL, they're going to attack Drew Stanton.
Yes, Drew Stanton. You're going to see a lot of trickery, I would say, in the secondary for the Detroit Lions. They've been planning on Drew Stanton for the upcoming week. Glover Quinn, who leads the team with 3 interceptions, you're going to especially see him start to drift back a little more, lure Stanton into a false sense of security. You're going to see the secondary, especially the safeties, really start to play on Drew Stanton's inexperience at the starter position. So I would say look for the Lions secondary to really take advantage of Stanton's lack of experience and just Matthew Stafford being Matthew Stafford.
So you both have the Lions winning. what do the Cardinals have to do to win this game?
I would say for the Cardinals to keep in this game, they're obviously going to have to work on shutting down Calvin Johnson and Golden Tate, which is really no easy feat. Obviously so, but you're going to have to really, if you're able to pressure them, it takes away the only receiving options that the Lions really have because they only target those two players, really. So you're going to have to take that away because they don't have any rushing game and they don't really have a third receiver that they can rely on. So I think you're going to see them focusing in on those two guys a lot more. I think you're really going to have to see Andre Ellington step up as the running back for the Cardinals. I think you're going to see a whole lot more of the weight shouldered on him. I think you're going to see the Cardinals really have to balance out their attack more now that Carson Palmer isn't at the helm.
I could see the Cardinals including a lot of screens and draws because the Detroit D-line, Ezekiel Ansah, Ndamukong Suh, they're going to be coming up the field quick. So to counteract that, screen pass to Ellington, draws up the middle, it'll really mix it up, and that'll open up the downfield passing game to Larry Fitzgerald. But other than that, I don't see the Cardinals doing anything else.
The only way you're going to beat the Lions is through the air, so I would say, like Pete said, it's a brilliant idea. You know, using the screen passes, using short, quick bullet passes to Larry Fitzgerald, it's something that he does so well. I think that you're going to have to see a game plan change, really, for the Arizona Cardinals, just because they're not really going to have that down-the-field threat that they had in Carson Palmer.
And on to our second game, the Eagles at Green Bay. Eagles 7-2, Packers 6-3. Who do you guys see coming out as a victor in this one?
Well, I think you can personally thank the Chicago Bears for giving all the momentum to Green Bay heading into this game. After the absolute shellacking that the Green Bay Packers put on the Bears last week at home, you're going to see Green Bay Packers come out firing on all cylinders against the Eagles team that is most importantly without Nick Foles. They're going to have Mark Sanchez manning the helm, and I think that you're going to see a Packers defense absolutely pouncing on this inexperienced quarterback with Philadelphia's system. I think that the week of practice just isn't going to be enough to take on Green Bay. It's just Mark Sanchez is a victim of circumstance, really. He's thrown into a can't-win scenario, a game at home against a red-hot Green Bay Packers team, against a red-hot Aaron Rodgers. I think you're going to see Green Bay come away with probably a 30-17 victory.
I also have the Packers winning. Both teams are coming in hot off of their primetime wins last week. Both the secondaries have struggled this year. Aaron Rodgers is going to exploit that Philly secondary so bad it might even be worse than last week. And Sanchez, he's Mark Sanchez. You can't trust him because he's Mark Sanchez.
Sanchez gets into his own head, and I think the fact that he's playing at Lambeau probably doesn't help any with such a raucous crowd. And I think that, it's so rare that we talk about a crowd actually, getting inside the head of an athlete just because they're professionals. They usually block it out. But you can absolutely see Green Bay playing these head games with Mark Sanchez, a guy who has, historically struggled with his confidence. So I think that definitely look for Green Bay to take advantage of the fact that Mark Sanchez isn't really on the same page as all of his receivers in Philadelphia quite yet. Mark Sanchez will pick up wins in Philly. It just won't start this week.
Okay, on to our third game, the Seahawks at the Chiefs. Great quarterbacks, great defense, and great running backs. Should end up being a good game. Who do you think is going to win this one?
I think it's going to be very fun to watch beast mode Marshawn Lynch taking on one of the top running defenses in the National Football League. It's going to be so much fun to watch how he decides to carve up the Kansas City defense because really it's kind of like how the Denver offense was hyped up before the Super Bowl going up against Seattle's defense. You want to see how that plays out. But in this case, I think that's definitely going to be the offense that wins out, unlike it was hyped up in the Super Bowl. I think you're going to see Marshawn Lynch really start to tear up Kansas City. Kansas City just hasn't been putting up a whole lot of points lately, and Seattle, which has gotten its swagger back, really. You have them putting up 30-plus points in the past two games. I think you're going to see Seattle really start to come away with a hard-fought victory. I'm going to say 17-14 against Kansas City.
Yeah, I also have Seattle winning 17-14 in Kansas City. Like you said, they got their swagger back. They beat up on the Giants last week. It was a real ugly game in the fourth quarter. Marshawn Lynch, he's the most important part of the offense because they don't have receivers for Russell Wilson to throw to. They need to solidify the offense by running it up the middle with him, run power, ISO, stretch. And once they get that going, they'll be able to throw it to the mediocre receivers that they have, like Doug Baldwin. And then they can run option with Russell Wilson But in the end, I think Russell Wilson or the Seattle Seahawks are going to win this game in Kansas City.
Absolutely. The one weakness that the Seahawks have had lately has been their passing game. They're 30th best in the NFL in passing, and I think that's just because of inconsistency from Russell Wilson and the fact that they've lost one of his most popular targets in Percy Harvin. So I think that you're definitely going to have to see Russell Wilson step up his game, as we know that he can. I think that's just Russell Wilson finding his groove again, and I think the fact that they've won 3 in a row, the fact that they're going up against a Kansas City Chiefs team that is very beatable, I think you're going to see Russell Wilson really start to get into that playoff mentality again. You're going to see the Seattle Seahawks cruising their way into a wild card spot for this year.
And on to the last game. One of the bigger games this weekend, the Patriots at Indianapolis. 2 very good quarterbacks, 2 very good teams. Who do you see coming out on this one?
I think it's absolutely a quarterback battle, really. Tom Brady going up against Andrew Luck. It's going to be incredible. Just in that Tom Brady has, had to run into a couple of hot quarterbacks lately, taking on Peyton Manning not a little while ago. So, you're going from, a record holder, really, in the NFL, a legend in Peyton Manning, their historic battles with each other, to now one of the young upstarts who, hasn't wholly left his mark on the NFL quite yet, but is well on his way. So I think that you're going to see Tom Brady, if only just because of his experience, win out this game. I think that, again, Indianapolis, the one way you're going to beat them is through the air. And I think that if anyone can pick apart a secondary, it's Tom Brady. Tom Brady can absolutely just march his troops down the field. He's making the most of not having a whole lot of receiving weapons. The New England Patriots just simply can't be stopped at this point. They're just always a threat to go deep into the playoffs. And even though they're going to be on the road in Indianapolis, I think you're going to see the Patriots walk away with this one. I'm going to say 27-24. I'm going to say it's in overtime, too. I'm going to be bold.
I'm pumped up for this game. I think this game could be one of the games of the year. I think it could go to the end of overtime. I really don't know who's going to win this game. Both teams are evenly matched, but like you said, Tom Brady, or the way to beat the Colts is to pass the ball, and Tom Brady has been able to exploit the past 5 teams they played. He's been on a roll. So if I had to pick, I think it'd come down to special teams, like I said before, and I'd say 27-24 overtime. Patriots.
It's just a matter of Andrew Luck. Can he keep up his success against a Patriots defense which has been surprisingly good this season? The Patriots' pass defense hasn't always been their strong suit, but this year they seem to have found some sort of functionality this year, to the point where they're figuring out some of the more tough quarterbacks. Even though Peyton Manning threw for over 400 yards, they were still able to keep him out of the end zone. So I think that that's something that you're really going to have to see Andrew Luck struggle with this week is, can he figure out this deceptively good Patriots defense? I think that you're going to see Andrew Luck probably not have as much success as he's used to. Being the number 1 pass offense in the league, I think you're going to see them start to struggle against the New England Patriots pass defense.
Yeah, and something that everyone says about Andrew Luck, he's one of the smartest quarterbacks in the league. I could see Belichick using that against him, try to make him overthink things, make him overthink scenarios. Show some, and Luck will think, oh, they're just bluffing, but it's actually going to be a blitz.
If there's anyone who can outsmart anyone, it's the combination of Brady and Belichick, as we've seen for the past 10 years, really, from them.
There you have it. That concludes our show. Next Thursday, we will debut our new show, This Week in Hockey, where we will recap the Wednesday night rivalry game between the Flyers and Rangers, plus what lies ahead in the hockey world. From Studio B, I'm Dave Hughes. He's Casey Bryant, and that's Peter Donato when we're off.